Part 1. Wanderlust. The old mill is silent and the water trough is dry. The herds are gone and the bellowing has ceased. The windmill is like an old man with his memories. Douglas Meader, Matador Tribune. Empire supreme in a world of vastness, romance and tragedy, legend and lore, unto itself as a world in its fastness, passing each day to return nevermore. Chapter 1. Working on the DDD. The scorched prairie stretched away empty and lonely. A hot August wind whipped at my face as I traveled north into the Indian Territory. My dun-colored horse was weary from travel, so I kept him at an easy pace. I was on my way to work for Dan Waggoner on his famous DDD ranch, which extended over thousands of miles in northern Texas and over in Greer County, Oklahoma. Just a stripling, leaving home to help supplement the family income and feed an ever-increasing family. As I traveled on that day in 1895, I didn't dream that the pathways of life would lead me to great distance in all directions. One particular one leading straight into encounter with the legendary El Fuego Baca. If I could have foreseen that one, I might have turned back homeward and never left again. But the wanderlust was as strong in me as in prairie norther, and I could not deny it. I slept on the ground at night, using my slicker for a bed. I had very little to eat, and at first was plagued with a loneliness that almost tore my young heart out. I lay there shivering that first night, alone and feeling mighty small. I cradled my head in my slender arms and wept silently. It took me several days to reach my destination, and each day was spent reflecting on happier times back in Wilbarger and the loved ones I had left behind me. I suffered greatly from the most heart-rending case of nostalgia. While traveling by several Indian camps, I passed through the Comanche country along the Red River. Many young Indians cast a wistful eye upon my horse, which showed his strength and speed in every part of his makeup. If I had not had previous experiences with Indians, likely I would not have gotten far. I was slender for my age, but wiry and active as a cat. I could look any kid back in my neighborhood, never did bar size. I was pretty well known as a scrapper. I was nearly 12 years old, and hard living had made a tough one out of me. I moved on as I approached the Comanche Indian camp that was on the tree-lined creek known as the Deep Red on the south side of the Wichita Mountains. I noted one of the warriors was watching me closely. I kept straight to my path and not stopped to talk. When I rode into camp, they gathered around me. Some of the young bucks wanted my horse. My buckskin was not for trade, and sale its dad had given him to me. One young buck decided to trade anyway. He started to pull off my saddle, and my temper flared. "Leave me alone," I yelled. He paid no mind. I sprung at him with all my might. I pulled my six-shooter as I jumped, and I struck him with a heavy blow with the barrel. It hit his left eye, closing it by bringing a piece of skin down over it. He slumped as though I had shot him. The other Indians looked at him, then me. Some patted me on the shoulder and back and laughed at the fallen warrior. Mad and tightly gripping my gun, I looked around for more trouble. But the amusement had left the faces of the other Indians. They honored bravery and despised cowardice. The other young braves looked at me with respect. The young maidens, much to my embarrassment, gathered around me, their eyes sparkling with admiration. They pretended to be interested in my horse. Giggling, they made signs to me they wanted to ride him. I was afraid of girls, but I figured I might have run into some sort of Indian custom with which I was not familiar. I did not care to offend them. I motioned to a pretty little maiden to sit with me in the pretty cavio. She came slowly up to my horse, eyes glued to the ground. I took my foot from the stirrups and gave her my hand. She sprang it behind me as spry as any boy. We rode out of camp with her small arms around my waist. After a short ride up the creek, we returned to the camp. I staked my horse and went into the little girl's wigwam where her mother dished out our supper. Later that night, they held a war dance in camp. I joined in the stamp for a while, then crept away to find a place to sleep. The hideous painted faces of the sweating warriors swam before me. I felt no fear for that. I knew the painted faces beneath them were but human, weak or strong, gay or somber human. My first day's ride had taken me several miles into the Indian Territory, and I was too tired to care about anything. As I lay listening to the beat of the tom-toms, I began reviewing my life with new appreciation. Before I fell asleep, I thought again of home. I thought of how the country around our place abounded in wild turkey, deer, and antelope. The antelope used to feed within rifle shot of our house for days at a time. I'd seen as many as 500 wild turkey at one time feeding in the valley in front of our home, which had been built upon a little hill some 300 yards from the creek. Dad dug a well just under the hill from the place. One Sunday morning, Dad and I started up the well for water. When we got something inside of it, we saw a wild turkey all around, and he sent me hurrying back for his gun. Mother didn't trust me with it, so she told me to babysit while she took the gun to Dad. I stayed with the baby till she was gone, then climbed upon our chimney and strained my eyes to see what was going on. Soon I heard the report of the old muzzle-loading shotgun, and clapped my hands together, for I knew we would have fried turkey breast for breakfast. I rushed back into the house, taking the baby from her crib box, and stood obediently waiting for their return. Dad had killed 6 with one shot. I thought, too, of how I had done my best to help Dad with his cows. One day I rushed into the house in a fit of temper to get my gun, and Mother took it from me. She told me to let the cowboys alone, that I might get hurt. I learned early in life how to fend for myself, and these men were drifting our cows off with their own herds, and after pleading didn't help, I was ready to shoot. As more farmers began to come in, the beautiful grazing lands I loved were broken by the plow, causing much dissension between the farmer and rancher. Nester became an ugly word. As for me, I did not like the change from the back of the Spanish pony to the plow handle behind the yoke of an oxen. I did not like the shocking wheat and oats and cutting corn and cane by hand and putting it in ricks, all of which was something new to me. I preferred standing night guard over a big herd of cattle. I'd always dreamed of being a cowboy. Already inured to the cowboy's way of life, I couldn't seem to adjust to sudden change. When the drought hit and dried up all the water holes, I well remember what was left was not fit for man or beast. Cattlemen began moving their herds from that section. Settlers were moving out, some on foot, some on horseback, in wagons and all sorts of poor teams. Dad had to quit teaching as there were no children to teach, and it became apparent that I would have to leave home to find work. We had no money for feed, and no money for food. The land was scorched and poor, and nothing would grow. We were living off bacon and greased gravy. Anything the farmers had planted that resisted the drought, the grasshoppers came and destroyed. Wheat sold for 30 to 40 cents a bushel, corn from 10 to 20 cents, and oats from 8 to 12 cents per bushel. Good work mules and horses sold for $25 and $50 each. A common saddle pony from $7 to $20. The best of fat cows could be bought for $6 per head. Good calves were $12.50. Good yearlings sold for $5, and 2-year-old steers for $8 a head. Typhoid fever raged all over the country, killing many people. It traveled a vicious path of destruction around Wilburger County, and my family was hit hard. It got me first. I lay near death for days. Mother was next, then the baby. Just when baby's sister seemed to be on the mend, she had a relapse and almost died. There were few doctors and little medicine around. Dad knew Don Wagoner, and he talked to him about my going to work for a while. Mr. Wagoner offered me $15 a month in beans. So it was decided I would go on my own for a while. Dad told me then, as soon as he was able to reopen the school, I was to come back and finish my education. I'd made it to 6th grade, but my destiny was written upon dark pages, and I would never again enter a schoolroom. My education, as far as book learning, was ended as I rode away to work for the DDD. My happy days as a child had been numbered, and circumstances drove me from home while I was yet in my impressionable years. These and other thoughts came to me that night in the Indian camp, but in spite of the whoops and chants of the red man, I finally slept. I knew I had a long way to go the next day. I was up early the next morning, restaked my horse, and ate and headed west as I learned from the Indians one of the DDD wagons was working somewhere between them and the line on Greer County, Oklahoma. I rode all that day, then made dry camp, camped without water. By daylight I was up again and looping over pinnacles. That evening, around 3 o'clock, I saw a lone horseman riding in the distance. I touched my spurs to my horse and headed him off. When I drew close enough to see him, I was riding towards him. He drew his mount into a halt and waited. He was a young man, bearded, dusty, and deeply tanned. He smiled and spoke as he wiped his beaded forehead on his sleeve. "Well, howdy, feller!" he exclaimed in surprise. "What the devil you doing riding alone all the way out here on this hot prairie?" "I'm looking for the DDD cow wagons," I answered. "I was told by the Comanches that they were somewhere between here and the Greer County line. Name's Byrd Cochrain." He took my extended hand. "Say, I'm looking for them too. I'm one of the DDD riders from the Red River Ranch. Name's Jim. Boss sent me out to join the prairie outfit. Come on, I think I know where the wagons are." I liked Jim right off. I never knew any last name for him. It didn't matter, though. Nobody, I was to learn, seemed to be much concerned with names except to use to get your attention if you were needed. We rode hard all day, and by dusk we were in a camp. A man named Jack Humphreys was the wagon boss. A meaner man I've yet to meet. But I needed work, so that night I was approached Jack and told him Mr. Wagoner said to put me on him. "Do you have a job for me?" I asked, pretty grown up. "Yeah, if you think you can ride my damned horses," he growled at me. He surely punctured my ego, and I literally shook in my boots at the sound of his voice. "If you ain't a clean sitter, you're apt to lose your own." By that, he meant I was likely to lose my saddle. I needed work, so I told him I would chance anything for work. Anyway, I thought I was a pretty fair rider for my age. He looked hard at me. I felt uncomfortable under his steady gaze. Then he cut me down. "I knew you damn nesters would starve out because you didn't have enough sense to rustle, and then the county was too dry to farm." He spat and gave me a cruel grin. I was young and proud, but couldn't chance backtalk. I didn't like his glare. I was the son of a nester. He had no use for me and made the fact clear all during my stay with the DDD wagons. But I had to do things his way right then. 15 a month, providing you can scratch my horses and will drag a nasty loop. It was then I hated for the first time. Humphrey spat at my feet and walked away. He wanted me to steal everything I got a chance to. Lots of farmers were settling now in Greer County and the Cheyenne country and along the Kansas line. It seemed to me that folks were coming from just about everywhere known. All northern people and farmers did not brand their stock, or if they did, it was only a small brand. In the winter and spring, when the heel flies were running the cattle, they would drift from home into the Comanche country. Humphreys was on the lookout for them with his bunch of men. They would cause the cattle to drift farther from home, and then rebrand them. That night I slept with my friend Jim, whose friendship I sorely needed right then. The next morning I had a big breakfast of sourdough biscuits, beef, and corn syrup. Then I was ready to mount when the wrangler brought them to the wagons. I looked at my horse as he came in with the other horses, and if he had not looked so tired, I do believe I would have pulled him out right then. I stood watching Jack Humphreys as he walked into the rope corral. We had to put up the corral to the rope for the mounts in. He turned to me. "Here's your horse, kid," he yelled. I went to him and he took my bridle reins. I couldn't help noticing that the boys were talking in low tones, exchanging some glances. As I passed the chuck wagon, where the wrangler was having his breakfast, I heard the negro cook say, "Just looky there. Look at what Mr. Jack done give that kid to ride." I walked on by the men, pretending not to hear. I tied the end of my catch rope to the end of my bridle reins, and then I put my basket onto the salty critter. I tried to saddle him, but could not get him with it. A cowhand named Johnny Cottrell came up and eared him down while I saddled him and did up my rope, fastening it into place. "Okay, Cottrell, I got him now," I yelled. Then I led him around a bit. He had his back arched like a tomcat hemmed up on a dog. I knew old Jack was feeling me out. He would like nothing better than for little Nestor to break his fool neck. I waited until the others were mounted and ready to go. Then I stepped to the side of my horse and got hold of the cheek rein and the bridle, and saddle horn with my right hand, and jabbed a finger into a snorting cuss's left eye. He gave a spring as the horse left the ground. I lit into the saddle and struck out with both feet into the stirrups, and happened to catch just right. Dug both my spurs as deep as I could into my cinch-rings, reared up in the saddle, then yanked a heavy riding quirt and pack from the saddle horn. This took some fast moving on my part. The old quirt was one dad that had made me. That beast was hitting the ground so fast and hard that I couldn't tell which end his head was on. I couldn't see it either. I didn't know which way he was going. I could feel myself going higher and higher with every jump. My strength was ebbing away. I thought the next jump would surely throw me clear over my saddle horn. About that time, Sam Powers came riding up to me and said in an even, low voice, "Kid, get down with them spurs and get a new hole. Rear back, dirty face, and give 'em hell." He came in the nick of time. His words saved me from being thrown. I did as he said, for I had no choice. I yanked his head in place and sat shaking my saddle from head to foot. Every nerve had been strained to the uttermost, and I was out of breath. Relief flooded over me, though I didn't want to cry. I tightened my lips and got control of my feelings. Some of the boys cheered me, and that surely did help my suffering. "Hey, if you can ride old Limburger, you can scratch any horse that wears the D brand," one of the hands yelled at me. I was then told I would make a good rider, and somehow I knew it to be true. Old Jack was sullen. He was disappointed in the Nestor kid. Then I got my first lesson in stealing cattle. We drifted cattle, picking up everything we could, shoving in the fat ones and stolen ones towards the Red River. It was not to my liking, but I needed the money. Back home I'd stayed in the saddle as much as possible. That helped me keep pace with the regular hands, and survive the long hours in the saddle. My horse would stop and wait for me to wake up. Most horses respond to kind treatment, but once in a while there's one like the men natural-born devils. Once such a man I met while both of us were working in Dan Wagoner. His name was Hill Loftus, but I can tell more on Hill. At first I wrote often to my parents. I told them about the old Limburger. I knew Dad would be proud of me. Mother wrote that I shouldn't take such chances and worry them so much. So I began to write less and less. I got on well with the hands, being a fair rider and as good as the best of them with a rope, and a dead shot with my gun. I had won their respect. I proved to be a useful hand for Humphreys in spite of his hatred for the settlers. He never stopped pressuring me, though. The men seemed surprised to see how I could gentle a horse. I was so light and sat as straight as an Indian in my saddle, so I never hurt a horse's back. I could ride a horse farther and longer than most on the ranch. But more trouble finally came to me. Payday rolled around. I had Mr. Humphreys make my check out to my dad. The first time one of the boys was sent to town for supplies, chuck, tobacco, and whiskey, I had no money to spend for liquor. When they passed the hat for collection, he asked me if I wasn't going to chip in. "No, I don't drink or smoke, so I don't intend to spend my money for it. My folks need—" "By God, are you going to chip in, Nestor?" he yelled at me, his ugly face turning beet red. "I'll hold out $2 on your next pay for a quart, you cheating Nestors. What is it to me if your whole damn family starves?" he spat. And I'd had enough. "Whatever you try that, old top, Dan Wagoner will get a new boss to run his outfit in this part, and it might be hard to find a cow thief as slick as you are, Jack." After I said it, I expected to get my head bashed in. He got himself in a really bad humor over that. He started for my horse and took off his rope from the saddle. He started for me without a word, and he wanted to get rid of me for some time. I'd never taken my eyes off him. Like Elroy said, "Jack, you ain't gonna rope and brand the kid, are you?" He tried to be funny, but all of us knew Jack was meaning business, and he wanted my hide. "He'll be branded by the time I wear this damn rope out on the sorry little SOB's behind end." He headed straight for me. I was scared, but stood still. Cottrell tried again. He stepped in front of Jack and said, "You don't need to whip that kid. I'll chip in his part." But the look Jack gave him caused him to step aside. He shrugged and walked off. I knew Johnny was no match for Humphreys. I had been sitting next to a stranger who had come into our camp the night before. As mean as old Jack was, he never turned travelers away from the chuck wagon. I stepped to one side as Jack neared me. When he was within 20 feet, the stranger stood, tall and straight. He spoke for the first time since I had joined us. He was a handsome man with a calm but clear and even voice. His right hand was resting on a pearl-handled gun. "Jack, you low-down cuss, you strike that kid and I will put a bullet through your cowardly brain. You would be the kind to whip a kid." Jack Humphrey stopped dead in his tracks. He turned and faced a man whose name no one knew. They stared at each other. The stranger's eyes shone like coals of fire. Jack cowered under the steel gaze, and without another word, he turned and started back to his horse. "Hold on," said the stranger, continued, moving towards Jack. "If I ever hear of you striking that boy, or if you fire him over this, I'll kill you the next time we meet. You've been on his back long enough." Humphreys made no reply. The stranger turned to me and said, "Boy, stay on the job and make a good cowboy." He offered me his hand. I grasped it, and tears of gratitude rolled down my dirty, sunburned cheeks. I looked up into the kindest face I had ever seen. I knew he must be the handsomest and noblest man alive. He had a slow, sad smile, beautiful even teeth, and a greatness I have never forgotten all these years. He held my hand and rumpled my unkempt hair. "Don't drink or smoke, and stay with the right crowd." With that, my new friend left me, mounted his horse, and turned his head towards the north. I looked at Jack, who pretended not to notice the stranger's slow departure. Thus ended our first meeting. I sadly regret that he was a child of misfortune, for I buried that man some 17 years later in South Dakota. Jack gave orders for us to move out. Some of the men crowded around me, wanting to know who the man was. Some didn't want to believe I had ever met him before. I told them I knew nothing, which was the truth. I never bothered to ask Humphreys if he knew the man. The men had never seen anyone run blazer over their boss. We rode on in silence, and I thought more about the stranger who had ridden into our camp the night before on a powerfully built sorrel horse. He had a pair of well-fitted saddlebags and a Winchester rifle on his saddle, and a well-filled cartridge belt to go with that pearl-handed Colt buckled around his trim waist. He had been a rather silent visitor, and it was custom not to ask for a name unless one was offered. I was getting plenty of practice with the rope. I was given the best jumping horse and assigned to do the job of dropping and dragging the calves up near the fire when they were caught by the burly cowpuncher, flanked and laid upon the ground. His partner would grab the calf by the hind leg and pull it back, backing his heel against the other hind leg, pulling it back and backing his heel against the other hind leg. With the man holding its head and one forefoot, and its weight upon the body, the calf was rendered helpless, ready to be branding iron to be stamped the DDD brand upon its raw hide, its ears to be marked, and then turned loose. During my stay at the DDD ranch, many strangers came and went, but I heard nothing of the man who had befriended me. The weather soon began to get colder, and my old clothes were a bit ragged and thin. If ever a child looked the part of a poor, hard-up mister's son, I did. My boots were all about worn out. I'd been sending all my money home, so I was forlorn-looking imp. I can't remember worrying how much I looked. I was so carried away with being a real cowboy, I didn't care about anything else. The men were, for the most part, kind and generous with me. When the boys sent to town for new clothes, they handed down their old ones to me. I picked the best ones, washed them in the river, and considered myself doing fine. After the range work stopped, or at least the wagons had, we were paired off and assigned to different camps called line camps. It was then I met some of the outlaws who have since become legends. My camp partner was a seasoned old puncher by the name of Hatch Rogers. Our camp was a dugout about 5 miles north from the southwest corner of the Comanche territory. Our job was to ride the bog along the Red River and keep the cattle from the north side from crossing into the river into Texas. and help cattle from the Texas side find their way into the territory, then drift them so their owners would never find them. I never drifted a cow that I didn't think of my poor dad and how he lost his little herd. We had also been instructed to scare off the settlers so they wouldn't cross the Red River looking for their strays. Old Hatch's wealth consisted of 2 Spanish ponies, a fairly good saddle, blanket, bridle, a pair of big, cruel spurs, and a fair-sized roll of bedding, a 6-shooter, a war knife with a 7-inch blade, and a deck of cards, and a pair of leather traps. After he had consumed all of his corn juice, he would moan and lament for a while and try to atone to his master for trying to brand a few extra cows or yearlings, running the risk of being caught for cow stealing. He missed the pin by a scratch many times, and was constantly lecturing to me. "Kid, you'll never make a cow puncher. You're just too damn conscientious." Then he would add, "Why should you care whose yearling it is? Just swipe it. Make sure you ain't caught." But Hatch got caught in Vernon, Texas. He was taken before a grand jury for questioning by a district attorney. "Mr. Rogers, were you ever indicted for cow stealing?" the DA asked. Hatch threw up his head with a jerk. "Nope, I've never been indicated, but I've been scared like hell," he said, and grinned at the big lawyer. "Do you have any stock of your own?" "Yep, got 2 ponies," Hatch started proudly. "What did you do with all the stock you've stolen?" Hatch jumped up and shook an angry fist at the attorney, yelling at him. "See here, Captain, I never said I stole cows. You fellows sure think you're mighty smart." With that, he turned and walked out. He left town with the sheriff on his trail. Once he crossed the river, he was safe from the law. He came into camp early the next morning and woke me up. He told me we were in for it. Hurriedly, he told me what had happened to him in Vernon. "I gotta hunt tall timber," he told me as he gathered up his gear. "You had better come with me." I told him flatly I wasn't going. I knew they wouldn't bother a kid, and I had learned how to keep my mouth shut. I watched old Hatch leave and didn't see him again for many years. He had circled back to Texas and settled down to do honest hard work.